evening, and welcome to the December 14th, 2023 meeting of the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals. If I could just ask everyone to take a moment and silence their cell phones. I'll start off by introducing members of the board. To the audience's left, far right, is Frank Duffy, who is a full voting member. Next is Mark Finneran, who is a full voting member. My name is James Morse. I'm a full voting member. Suzanne Murphy is our full voting member and our clerk. Scott Peterson is our vice chairman and a full voting member, and Tony Petrucci at the end is our associate member. We're also joined this evening by Noreen Stockman, the zoning administrator, and Ashley DeMello, who is our recording secretary. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the state zoning statutes as well as the town's zoning bylaws in reviewing and voting on applications. All decisions are made through the public hearing process. Our goal is to hear testimony from the applicants and the public and to allow for a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement for the hearing and read pertinent information from the file. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation. Time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then question the applicant. Next, the public will be invited to comment. Public comment should be directed only at the project. Please refrain from making derogatory statements. Questions can include an opinion in favor or opposition, or to ask a specific question about the project. Comments should be limited to 2 minutes. The chair will limit discussion in the interest of time if comments become repetitive. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair, should come to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record. Please speak into the microphone. It does not amplify your voice, but is provided for the benefit of FCTV viewers. The board may continue the hearing to a future date and time. Otherwise, when the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented to make a decision, the hearing will be closed. Once a hearing is closed, no more testimony may be taken. The board shall discuss the proposal amongst themselves, then make a motion to approve or deny the application. The motion will be followed by a summary of key findings and conditions. The affirmative vote of 4 members, a supermajority, is required for the approval of special permits, variances, or appeals. A split vote, 3-2, is a failure to carry and would result in a denial. Any zoning board of appeals decision may be appealed as provided for in Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 17. And at the request of FCTV, asked to make an announcement that due to Comcast channel lineup changes effective immediately, FCTV Government Channel 15 is moving to Channel 9. For additional viewing options, please go to www.fctv.org. First up on our agenda this evening is public comment. This public comment is reserved for anything that is not specifically on tonight's agenda. Does anyone in the audience wish to make a comment on something not specifically on tonight's agenda? We're going to take 2 matters out of order. We have 2 requests for continuations. 070-23 Clark, trustee of 711 West Falmouth Highway, requesting modification of special permit number 1737. There is a request for a continuance, I believe, in the file to January 18th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that in writing? Is the applicant's representative prepared to sign any request? Good evening, Mr. Clower. Is there a motion to continue this hearing to January 18?
So moved.
Can we discuss this?
Well, we don't have a motion. Why don't we get a motion, then we can discuss a continuation. Is there a motion to continue to 118?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Second. Is there discussion on the motion?
How many continuances are they allowed?
In theory, as many as they want, and I'm not a fan of kicking things down the road. The general request, I believe, on this is merely, I think that the attorneys wish to meet concerning the case law to see if they can come to resolution or agreement. That doesn't, even if there's resolution, I would suggest amongst the attorneys, doesn't necessarily mean the board is going to approve or deny. But generally, it's been the board practice that if a request is made to continue by an attorney for some other for a reason or scheduling available, we have generally given continuances.
I have a small problem with one-on-one attorney meetings outside of the public eye.
This isn't a meeting. I think they're just discussing the case law regarding split levels or split zoning.
So there'll be no deliberation whatsoever?
The deliberations for this board.
Not between the board. Really for the attorney, just to simply, I think, just try to distinguish the case law.
Okay.
And I'm kind of leaning in Tony's direction. I think this should be a fair and open process. I mean, it has already started. I think any of these details should be inclusive in front of us and in front of the public.
They would be. The applicant still needs to come back, and we would then have the benefit of our attorney weighing in about the issue. It still also doesn't affect whether or not people feel that the application is appropriate or coming to a decision.
If we get a decision from town council, one way or the other, it will be to us in writing. Will it be in writing?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have it for our benefit, right?
No. Semantics, if you may, but it wouldn't be a decision, it would be an opinion.
Well,
if I'm
that's
not
right.
Correct.
An opinion.
They're not interchangeable at all.
No, it's not a decision, it's an opinion. But my concern is that it be in writing, so we all know what it is. All right.
So we just make sure that we get a written request back from town council, or written opinion back from town council, excuse me.
Prior to the 18th.
Yes. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor to continue the matter to January 18th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, continue to 118.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Deb, you want to sign this? Thanks. Thank you. Nice save. Let's get Lushenko out.
Bless you.
The other request for continuation is under new hearing 09823, 70 Philadelphia Street, East Falmouth, requesting a special permit to remove a portion of the existing dwelling, so on. Property was not staked. They are requesting a continuation to January 4th of 2024. Is there a motion to continue to January 4th, 2024?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second. Any discussion on this motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's a vote. Next up, we'll take up under continuations, continuation of 08223 Galasso 545 Main Street, requesting a special permit to redevelop the building for dwelling units, commercial accommodations, and restaurant. So there's two issues tonight. It's an appeal of the building commissioner's determination, as well as a continuation of a special permit application. Anything additional in the file for, or procedurally, Noreen, we need to announce?
File, here it is.
So we did have a submission from the Office of the Building Commissioner at the end of the day today. There was a request attached to that email. Please read just a letter from the Building Commissioner into the record.
And that's page one. Page one.
Yeah, does it go on to page 2?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I have a letter from the building inspector, Gary Street. It says, "Dear Zoning Board of Appeals, enclosed, please find my affidavit in opposition to Mr. Armand's filed appeal regarding my alleged decision, ZBA 082-23. Eleanor McKay's affidavit is also enclosed in support of the building department's opposition to the appeal. As I stated multiple times to Mr. Armand, my letter was not a final decision or order of the building commissioner, but merely a non-binding advisory opinion provided as a courtesy to an applicant, informing them that a special permit is required for commercial accommodations in the Mr. Cod Density Overlay District. I also informed Mr. Armand many times that the only final decision or order I would make on the matter would be whether or not to issue a building permit. Mr. Arment was fully aware that the letter that is subject to this appeal was not a final decision or order of the building commissioner, and received the letter only after inundating the building department with so many requests for it that he was distracting our department from functioning at its best. I hereby withdraw my non-binding advisory opinion that is the subject of this appeal, and is the letter dated September 8th, 2023. In the future, the only written correspondence I intend to provide will be in approvals or denial of a building permit or a response to a written zoning enforcement request for an alleged violation. While a non-binding advisory opinion can be an important tool to assist applicants with the building permit application process, it is just as important to ensure that applicants do not abuse this assistance by misrepresenting these opinions in order to confuse boards and unnecessarily consume municipal resources. And I think that's all we have that's new on this, right?
So there was that letter, there was attachments to
On another.
that letter, and then there was a separate email forwarded from the town planner.
To read.
No, I don't think there was a
Just
request to
additional.
read it, but it
Okay.
is new to the file this evening.
Okay.
For the applicant, good evening.
Good evening, members of the board. As you know, and for your record, I'm Bob Ament, attorney for the applicant. The principal of the applicant is Michael Galasso. Michael is here with me tonight. This, of course, is a continued hearing. And there are two matters before the board. One, the appeal of the building commissioner's decision that a special permit is required for the proposed mixed-use project. And then if the board agrees that a special permit is required, we're asking for that special permit. And we made presentations at the last meeting on this matter, and I don't want to be repetitive, but it's been some time, and I'm sure there'll be some repetition. And there were many people who wanted to speak at the last meeting who didn't have an opportunity to. I'd like to comment briefly on the letter that was just read. It is extremely defamatory and in many respects, all respects, inaccurate and filled with misstatements. It's very troubling. That letter was apparently delivered to the Board of Appeals at 4:30 this afternoon and circulated at 4:59 this afternoon and given to me 5 minutes before this hearing began. This hearing was continued at the last meeting in order to give the building department an opportunity to submit material. To be provided with this type of a letter at this point is disrespectful. It's simply a disgrace. My goal is to help the applicant get permission to renovate the closed nursing home on Main Street and to provide a terrific project with affordable housing for the town. That is my sole goal. If that's done pursuant to the special permit, that's just fine. If the building commissioner is wrong that a special permit is required, the Board of Appeals should find so. In fact, the Board of Appeals should make that determination whether or not an appeal has been filed. And in fact, I did not expect to receive a letter from the building commissioner. And I filed the application for the special permit without any such letter and only added the appeal after he provided a letter, which he knew I wanted in order that I could appeal. When I submitted the special permit application, I included a copy of the case law that says that if the Board of Appeals in a special permit case decides that a special permit is not required, the Board of Appeals should make that as its determination. And so you should make that determination regardless of whether it's pursuant to an appeal of the building commissioner's decision, which I needed to do in order to preserve my client's rights, or simply because that may be your decision in the special permit case. I explained to you at the last meeting, and I could pull up the provisions in the bylaw if you wish to see it again on the screen, that a mixed use is defined in the bylaw as any combination of residential and commercial uses without limitation is what the language says. And I pointed out to you that the prior definition of mixed use used the word permitted. It had to be permitted commercial use, but that was removed. In other words, uses that could be allowed by special permit could be the mixed use. And that's why the language also was added that says without limitation. We're proposing a mixed use that includes residential units and commercial accommodation units. That would be short-term rentals, 30-day rentals, which are defined as commercial accommodations in our bylaw. And that combination works for the renovation of this building and the provision of significant affordable and workforce housing. And commercial accommodations, like residential use, is allowed in both the business redevelopment district and in the general residence district, which is where this mixed residential commercial overlay district exists. It's on the sewer, it's on Main Street. This is the area that the town meeting provided for this kind of use. I'm not asking you, we're not asking you to approve a project that includes a use which can't be in those districts, like a fast food restaurant or a auto body repair shop. Those aren't allowed, but commercial accommodations are allowed. And mixed use is defined in our bylaw, as I said, is any combination of commercial and residential uses without limitation. Now, I know that the building commissioner has come to the thinking that this isn't allowed under the mixed residential commercial overlay district. But I think it is. And I will tell you that the planning board unanimously agrees with me. Jim Fox is here from the planning board with their authorization to tell you so tonight. And that's what the language says. And why did town meeting do that? It wanted to provide an alternative to 40B applications and encourage dense development with affordable housing on Main Street, on the sewer. And it was supposed to streamline permitting. The bylaw also says that the planning board shall be the sole permit granting authority under the Mr. Cod bylaw. We're applying for mixed use under the Mr. Cod bylaw. The planning board has approved it under site plan review. And we think that the delay that has been occasioned by needing to deal with the Board of Appeals on this is exactly what the town meeting was trying to avoid. Streamline the creation of affordable housing. It's been more than 2 years now since the Mr. Cod bylaw was approved. We've had one small project approved, and it hasn't been built. We need to expedite the approval of a project like this, and it's a perfect project. Now, and whether or not you take this all into consideration pursuant to the appeal that was filed, which the building commissioner says was inappropriately filed, or you deal with this as part of the special permit application, I don't care what you do. And if you decide that a special permit is needed, then all I care about is that you grant the special permit. I don't have to win the issue of whether a special permit is required or not. That argument was advanced in good faith. The fact that the planning board unanimously agrees, the planning board which submitted the article to town meeting with my interpretation of the language, which seems clear to me in the bylaw, gives me comfort in the position that we've taken. If you have questions about the appeal part of this procedure, I'll try to answer them now. And if you want to go directly to the special permit issue, then Michael Galasso would like to present some information about it. And I know there are a lot of people who would like to speak. You've received 25 letters, every one of them in support of this project. And they include the Falmouth EDIC, includes the Affordable Housing Committee. We have a letter from our state representative, a letter from the state senator. They're all in support of this project because it's so important. It's a letter from the Chamber of Commerce in favor of this project, and from many people who think that this project would help them with their housing needs. So I'm happy to answer your questions.
So I think we need to address, the first issue is the issue of the appeal, which I don't think doesn't require, we just need to have a discussion on as to whether or not we believe, whether we want to uphold the building commissioner's determination. If the answer is no, I think that at that point, that would be the board finding that this is a planning board purview only, and I think that at that point, the special permit is moot. Or if we decide that we want to uphold the building commissioner's determination, then we need to continue on with the special permit.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make sure that you invite Jim Fox to speak on that issue, if you're going to discuss that first.
If we're going to discuss the appeal,
Yes.
Yeah.
what does Mr. Fox need to add about the appeal?
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to ask him.
How would the board like to proceed? We want to take testimony? We generally don't on
Well,
appeals,
I
but
think logically, we have to decide the first issue, whether or not a special permit is required. And then we can go on with the special permit if that's what the board wants to do.
Well, Mr. Fox is prepared to present the planning board's opinion with respect to that question.
Well, then that's,
This is the ZBA.
well, no, we can hear this.
I'm happy to hear from Mr. Fox.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Jim Fox, planning board member for many years. Planning board worked for years to try to develop a way to move what we thought were very good housing, affordable housing projects through our myriad of boards that we have to go through. And we tried to streamline it, saying that we could put an overlay district where a good project came, it could get approved by the planning board and move forward without any other boards getting involved. That was the whole purpose, that we would become, if there was a special permit, that we should be the special permit granting authority. But we basically were trying to do the basic fundamentals by right. We feel this is a great project. Every time it's come up for us, we voted in favor of it, and they reaffirmed that this week. This is really important. It's a good project, and our town needs this going forward. I hope you consider that the whole intention of Mr. Codd was not to come to this board just for what you see happening now. That's why we passed the bylaw, and we feel that this is a great project, and we really hope you can see that we'll move forward and help our towns getting at solving some of the issues. This is an existing building. It's a great use. I hope you consider that the planning board took enough decision to approve this in a site plan review, and it should move forward. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
I have a question.
That answer questions. Go ahead.
Spinner and Mr. Tucci, then.
You basically stated that you passed this, Mr. Codd,
Which wasn't written quite as well as it should have been because you already have plans to amend it. But part of this is you want to eliminate the ZBA in the process. We are the last line of defense for abutters who couldn't afford to go to court and defend their rights. In effect, this takes their rights away, and it strictly becomes the opinion of the planning board. I mean, then why are we here? I don't agree with it. Or you?
Well, I'd have to say that I've never seen a perfect project come before this town.
that's why we're here.
But you'll never get a perfect project. This is a very good project.
There's no
And
such thing as perfect. And when you eliminate us, you make it less perfect.
I don't want to get too much into.
No, we don't need to get into, we're trying to move forward from a zoning that was written 50, 60 years ago, that was auto-centric, driven around, designed around cars, where everyone to drive everywhere, and we're trying to break out of it as fast as we can, and many people are set in their old ways of this town, and we, in order to solve our problems, we've got to start looking to the future and believe this mixed use, we really feel strongly that mixed use is how to do it. And it's not perfect, but it's very good.
Eliminating cogs in the wheel isn't the way to go about it.
We can get into the merits of the application. Let's focus for this point on the issue.
I'm
of the-
talking about the merits of the whole,
the issue of the appeal.
Mr. Cod.
Do you have a question about the appeal?
Past town meeting,
Rebutting his statements.
this is a town meeting
And
discussion.
no, maybe next time it won't.
I have a question.
Do you have a question about the appeal? The appeal aspect.
I'm going to try.
Okay.
Because now it's become somewhat muddled. If we have a bylaw that allows the planning board to make this decision, and we're only here because of an appeal, then we should discuss that appeal. Does it have merits, or does the planning board have the right to do what they did? I mean, I don't understand why, I mean, I happen to agree about the project, that doesn't matter. But I also agree with Mr. Finneran about the ZBA, but we're here because somebody filed an appeal suggesting this should be under special permit versus what is already, is it a bylaw? A bylaw that the planning board has the right to do this. I would suggest that after the fact, that changes, but that's not in this, before us today. I think it is what it is. They voted on it, so we have no choice but to then decide, do we subvert, go around this bylaw that allows the planning board to do this? The applicant says he doesn't care. If it's gotta go special permit, it's gotta go special permit. That would satisfy several people on this board, but we have a bylaw that says planning board does this. We can change that later if we don't like it, but I agree with Mr. Finneran about what the ZBA should be doing and not the planning board.
Suzanne?
Through you to Mr. Fox, what did the town planner say on this?
You speak up to the microphone so everybody can hear you.
There were some issues, a couple of people thought that it could, that the overlay district was a little gray area and it was subject to interpretation. And in his opinion, he thought, I think for safety reasons, they were thinking that it could come to your board for approval. But, you know, we've had many, it's just a matter of opinion from the town planner, or there's been, the town planner have had lots of different opinions on very different items. The planning board feels very, very strongly that this is a great project and it should move forward. I don't believe we actually listened to the town planner. He's not a voting member of our board. I mean, he's just like anyone else and comes out and make their opinion, so I didn't really register his exact words. But our entire board voted 100% unanimous to move forward in this project.
But you don't remember what your town planner advised?
I don't remember his exact words. Obviously, we're here, he had some caution on what, but
Okay, thank you.
You know, I want to make it clear, the town planner and the building commissioner have taken the position that a special permit use requires a special permit from the ZBA. And the issue is, what does the mixed residential commercial overlay district bylaw in fact say? And I've told you what it says. It says any combination of commercial and residential without limitation, and it took out the language that talked about permitted. It would have been great if the town meeting article had been even more clear. I think it's pretty clear. The planning board shall be the sole permit granting authority. That's what it says. You know, if this weren't a mixed-use project, I don't think anybody would think we needed to be before the Board of Appeals. Because the bylaw is clear that the planning board can approve 20 units per acre. Even though if you're not in the mixed residential commercial overlay district, a Board of Appeals decision, or if you did a project without affordable housing, then you can come to the Board of Appeals and ask for a special permit to have multifamily development at 6 units per acre. There's also a provision that allows 8 per acre, but that requires a special permit from the Board of Appeals. Town meeting knew that, and there's discussion as in the record of the town meeting about that when it was suggested you need to go, you're eliminating the Board of Appeals from that. Well, that's what town meeting did. They did it to expedite permitting for projects that include affordable housing. They did it to encourage people to proceed under the zoning bylaw instead of under Chapter 40B. That's what they did. And you can disagree with what town meeting did. You may feel that you, members of the Board of Appeals appointed by the Select Board, have to have a role in all of these things. But town meeting said that the planning board, elected by the voters of the town, will get to just be the sole permitting authority on Mr. Cod projects.
Question, and I'm trying to get this linkage correct. So on the second page of the planning board's approval, they talk about the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. They discuss the 26 residential dwelling units having one-year lease terms to be included in the town's SHI. They would need to be separated from the 30-day rental term units as its own development through a separate ownership agreement, and not the commercial accommodations units portions. So I guess, are these condo units? And if we have commercial accommodations, don't they require a special permit? I'd like to get your insight and color on that.
I guess the last sentence you've just said brings this back to the issue of the appeal. Otherwise, I was thinking that you were really talking about the merits of the project. First of all, this is an unusual project.
Agreed.
And to be able to do what we're doing under Mr. Cod, and I think it's the only way we can do this project. Thank you. You know, we're proposing this mixture of year-long rentals and the short-term rentals. Only year-long rentals are eligible for inclusion on the subsidized housing list. So those are the units. Possibly as few as 26. Mr. Galasso hopes he'll be able to do more than that. And that has to do with the size of the units and qualifying for the state's housing regulations. What the state is saying is that the affordable housing project has to be separate from the rest of the project. In this case, in a single-use building, the only way to do that would be to create condominium units and then have some of them be in one ownership and others be in another ownership. To do that in this case is unnecessary, unwieldy, and we are confident that the state is not going to require that we can have a regulatory agreement with the state that recognizes single ownership of the building and restricts for affordable rentals those units which have been so designated. Now, under Mr. Cod, to build this project, we're required to have the units be on the subsidized housing list. We will have to work this out with the state. Recently, there was a meeting at the site with the state's Secretary of Housing. This project has the overwhelming support of the leadership in the state on this issue. We are confident we'll be able to work it out. The Board of Appeals, let alone the Planning Board, should not make a decision on whether we want this project based on what will happen in the course of negotiating with the state to have the right regulatory agreement to restrict it. We'll make that happen.
So again, and Mr. Cod specifically states that all local and state permitting are in place, but you're telling me this portion of it fundamentally is not in place because,
Which portion?
well, that you need to get, you're talking about getting some additional approvals on how this ownership arrangement
Well, we're
is
not
going
going,
to
we
be.
obviously, we have to comply. I don't think it has the words "in place," by the way. I think it says it's subject to other state, local, and federal regulations. And it specifically says we have to be able to get these units on the subsidized housing list. I don't think anybody thinks first of all, you can't get them on the list until you've built them. Well, that may not be quite true. We have a lot of permitting to do.
Right.
And a lot of financing issues to deal with. This is really an early step. Do we want this project? Do we approve it based on the zoning issues? Then Mr. Glass is going to have a lot of work to do to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I'll personally make my statement. I mean, I like what you're doing. I like, the forward thinking. I'm just trying to thread the needle with the words that we have in the bylaws.
I
And that's what
understand
I'm
that,
struggling with.
but we are making it, when you thread that needle, you can do it. You can do it. This project works, but you've got to want to make it work. Do you want to make it work or don't you? That's the issue.
So two
It can
steps
work.
again, excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Ahmet. We need to resolve the first issue. On the appeal of the building commissioner's determination, the building commissioner has issued a ruling that basically states that it is subject to a special permit. So, the appeal has been taken. Mr. Duffy.
I read the building commissioner's most recent letter, which we got tonight at 4:59, as Mr. Ament has mentioned. And it's kind of distressing that it's happening this way, that we're getting a decision like this, and it's very substantive. Now, the building commissioner basically is saying that he previously issued to Mr. Ament an advisory opinion and not a determination, and questions whether or not Mr. Ament has the right to appeal an advisory opinion, which I disapprove of that way of doing business. But in any event, Mr. Ament has also applied for a special permit, and we understand why he did. So I think in determining the special permit, we may independently, regardless what the building commissioner says, determine whether or not a special permit is necessary. That is a function that we have a right to do. And I think that I'm going to make a motion to present to the board, and it's the subject of our discussion. But if you look at the provision in the zoning bylaw, 247.5D, the following uses will be allowed by right, as set forth under this section, provided that all necessary permits, orders, or approvals required by local, state, and federal laws are obtained, including site plan review by the planning board. And then it says under subsection A, mixed-use developments, and that's what this is. This is a use allowed by right, and those words, allowed by right, are very important, because it means that you have a right to do it. You don't have to come and ask anybody's permission to do it. You don't have to get a special permit to do it. And one of the things that Mr. Ament submitted, it was a copy of a case from the town of Webster, where the court basically said that if the zoning bylaw allowed you to do something by right, it doesn't grant to the zoning board of appeals the authority to grant a special permit. And this is a basic principle of law that's been around for years. It's nothing new. So I'm going to make a motion, put it on the floor. I move to override the decision of the building commissioner and determine that the property at 545 Main Street may be converted to a mixed-use development under section 247.5 of the Falmouth zoning bylaw without a special permit from the Board of Appeals and subject only to the condition of the planning board's site plan review of August 15, 2023. I don't feel a special permit is necessary. I think that's the end of the discussion. But obviously, the board has some, questions about that.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's only the regular voting
Oh,
members
that's
this
right,
evening.
yes.
Mr. Spinner?
Discussion of the motion?
Needs to be a second, it fails otherwise.
Getting one here.
So there's no second to the motion. Motion fails.
Okay.
Going back to the issue of the appeal. Discussion on the issue of the appeal. Got a little off topic. We have, well, first of all, for the record, I agree. I don't like, and this board has discussed numerous times, late submissions to hearings and evidence and so, and I'm a little concerned. I want to give our building commissioner great deference. It's his job to interpret the building code. The letter is dated December 12th. The attachments are dated December 12th. And I can certainly share Mr. Ahmed's frustration getting something coming in on 2 days later at 4:30 PM.
Great.
In deference to the building commissioner, he's communicated that he's made that point several times to Mr. Amant, but yet he continues. And is it not true that all commercial accommodations are subject to a special permit?
No.
No, yeah, not to bad, actually, that the district and the density, but with density like this, it would be. And also, sometimes you get conflicting things, but the way they present it, Mr. Cod says without limitations. That eliminates this whole thing altogether? I can't agree with that. Absolutely can't.
So the first issue is, does anyone want to make a motion at this point on the issue about the appeal? Do we want to uphold the building commissioner's determination?
I would make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Just procedurally, that if we uphold the building commissioner's determination, it's not a denial of the project, it merely pushes it into special, we continue on with the special permit, and we're happy to hear testimony from the audience and further presentation.
That's the way it
That's a
should be.
motion?
That's the way I
The
think.
second?
Yes.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of upholding the building commissioner's determination, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
4-1. Got the vote, Ashley? Okay. Building commissioner's determination is upheld. We can continue on as to a special permit application on this project. Are there specific questions, or is there any additional presentation, Mr. Rama, you'd like to make? Or are you satisfied?
Thank you. On the request for a special permit, Mr. Galassa would like to make a presentation. So,
Thank you. Good evening, excuse me, good evening, Michael Glasso. I'm the developer of the project, the conversion of the Royal Nursing Home on 545 Main Street into 71 units of affordable workforce housing. I will just make one comment, if I may. You know, as a developer of affordable housing for almost 40 years now, we rely on the ordinances as written by our town. And I know that other developers, contractors, builders, when they hear about the action that's been taken here this evening, I'm not sure how much trust they'll still have in this town interpreting our ordinances. It seems to be very clear what it says. Without any further comments on that, last time I was here, I presented the project and showed you pretty much around the project. I talked a little bit about my experience in developing affordable housing, which I think is very important when you consider any affordable housing project, is the experience of the developer who's going to put that project forward, the experience that they have over the years, not only developing but managing affordable housing. There are 25 letters of support in your files on this project. There are no letters of opposition to this project. As Mr. Ahmed says, it has strong support of our state senator, state legislators, the Falmouth EDIC, the Chamber of Commerce, many of members here tonight from our scientific community. We've had tours through the project site. We've had the Secretary of Housing walk through the project. It is a difficult project because we're trying to do something that's desperately needed. And that's what I've done my whole career. I take on difficult projects. This is difficult, but it's needed. We need seasonal housing for our seasonal workers. Otherwise, you're not going to have a Dunkin' Donuts. You're not going to have a Starbucks. You know, our restaurants are going to continue to be closed a number of days a week. So this is desperately needed. And I was approached by many of those institutions about converting this project into something that would help their employees and help them retain employees. There was a presentation last week, I believe, to the selectmen about the fire department. They bring in trainees, people who've gone through the camp already and are ready to come to work here, and they need a place to stay. We're going to be building a police academy up at the tech park. There's going to be 65 trainees there. They need a place to stay. Multiple uses for this facility. It's on town sewer. It's on public transportation line. It's all the things that you want to hear about building dense, affordable housing in our community. It seemed that traffic and parking was one of the big issues, so I'd like to take you through what we're doing with to respond to that. Here's the building. I think many of you are familiar with it. Some of you have gone through and walked through it. It's 52,000 square feet on almost 2 acres of land. Currently, this is the plan as is. There are 79 parking spaces there right now. There are 79 parking spaces there. This facility housed 121 patients when it was fully operational. Had 20 to 40 employees on 3 shifts. It had deliveries, served 3 meals a day. Had emergency vehicles coming and going, visitors. So obviously there was a large amount of traffic that was occurring there. As we started planning the site, because our regulations now require larger parking spaces, and I thought as we got older, our cars actually got smaller, and we had more smaller cars, but we have larger parking spaces than when this project was built. So because to meet that requirement, we lost a number of parking spaces. Not only that, but the fire department decided they needed to get their ladder truck all the way around the building. So because of that requirement, and you can see there's a diagram that shows the ladder truck going around the corner and then back down along the side of the building. Because of that requirement, we also lost additional spaces. One thing that I like to do is I install solar lights. This will be a very energy efficient building, and we like to put shade where we have asphalt parking. So we have this little island that will have some planting there in order so that we don't create a hot effect by having all that asphalt back there. And you can see that on this plan on the left-hand side. The other amenity that we're providing the town is a civic plaza in front of the building. This is an area that we don't really have on that end of Main Street. I think the eastern part of Main Street is slowly being developed. We lack a community plan for how we're gonna develop the east side of Main Street. But this is one step toward providing some common open space for our residents and the community. It's a community amenity. There'll be on the ground floor a little cafe, so people can sit there, have some coffee, enjoy the day, and a nice green space for that part of Main Street. So, the planning board, through the Mr. Cod ordinance, was permitted to reduce the number of parking spaces we needed on site. So, we have 59 parking spaces on site, but to accommodate our needs of our residents, we'll have other means of transportation. We gotta get away from everyone having their own car, especially in areas like this in our downtown area, where we want to increase density. So, this is an electric 8-passenger Volkswagen vehicle that will be available for us to transport our residents down to Woods Hole, up to the hospital, wherever they may need to go. That's part of our project, being maintained by us. We're big fans of electric vehicles. There's a company that I work with called Envoy. They provide to us electrical vehicles. They maintain them, they install the charging stations, and our residents can use them on an hourly basis just through an app. These are only used by our residents. They can rent one of the cars that will be there. We may not have Teslas there, but an Audi, a Chevy Volt, for $24, $15 per hour. It's cheaper to rent one of these than it will be to take a bus up to Boston. We have a number of electric vehicles that will be available, electrical bikes and also human-powered bikes. Those are shown on our site plan, where there'll be lockers for those. So we're trying to get away from single-car ownership. There's been many studies done that show that affordable housing projects have been overparked for years. By including these other amenities, we can get away from that. And also, we're right on the transit line. The seaside line of the Cape Cod Transit goes right by our property. It runs 7 days a week. The first bus leaves Woods Hole about 6 o'clock in the morning. We buy our property by 6:30 or 7, and take it all the way to Hyannis. Besides the bus itself, they also have 2 other services. Dial a ride. For $3, you can call and get a ride on DART. And they also have what's now called Smart DART, which operates very much like Uber, and that's only $3 too. So we're trying to lower our carbon footprint by what we're gonna do to the building and lowering the number of cars that would be operating on site. So I hope that answers some of the questions you may have regarding traffic. There was a traffic study that was done, that was presented to you. It's in a file, and I wanted to share with you today some of the other things that we're doing as far as providing adequate parking and other means of transportation on the site.
Can you help me with the math, Mr. Glasso? So you're telling me you have 59 total spaces?
On site, correct, yep.
Okay. We have a restaurant with 24 seats, so we have to have 12 parking spaces for the restaurant. So that leaves 47 spaces. We have 26 affordable units and 45 commercial units. I guess I'm still struggling with your math, that we have enough parking.
Well, the reduction in parking that was granted by the planning board under Mr. Cod is shown on this plan right here, on the right-hand side.
Okay. Again, I didn't even add employees. If we only have 47 remaining parking spaces, where's everybody parking? And Mr. Arment can answer, whoever wants to answer. It's more of a math question, quite honestly.
Well, the answer is that the applicant doesn't think that they need one space for every unit of residential units or commercial accommodation units because of the nature of the units, that is the very small size, the likely number of occupants. I think almost all of these units are anticipated to be occupied by a single person, except for there are a couple of bunk rooms.
And the one bedrooms might have two people.
It might. So there are a few that could. And if you look at the statistics that are in the traffic report on this very issue, they talk about the number of, the percentage of units that require a parking space. And it is also possible to restrict the tenants from bringing a car onto the site, but that doesn't seem to be necessary. Keep in mind that it may be that a lot of the occupants during the busy part of the year are going to be J1 workers who come to this country, and few of them have a car. You could have concern about the amount of parking. We think it works. But you need to weigh your concern against the benefits of this project. Now, if you were right, if you disregard what the professionals say, Mr. Galasso doesn't want to create a situation that isn't going to work. He thinks it will work. But that can't be your sole criteria. The zoning bylaw provides that the standard is whether the adverse effects, and you're concerned, will parking have an adverse effect? Whether that overbalances the beneficial effects on the neighborhood or the town. If we could provide more parking, we would. Frankly, the fire department requirements, we've lost a number of spaces because of that. The fire department has been able to get around this property for years and years. But we can't. We don't have more parking to provide on site. And we think it's going to work.
I appreciate that response. Again, just math. We have 59, we need 12. For the restaurant, we're down to 47. How many employees are going to be employed? 12.
Keep in mind also that, that the restaurant, many towns have a parking requirement of 1 for every 3 spaces, not 1 for every 2 seats, not 1 for every 2. And in a situation like this, some of the customers and some of the employees may very well be residents of the property. And given the location, many people will walk to this site. So
I'm just doing math.
So
I'm
will
not
47
I'm not going to
spaces
challenge
be-
you.
Will
Yeah.
47 spaces be sufficient? Mr. Galasso thinks so.
And then how many for staff?
Staff between who will operate the property management side and also the restaurant?
No, disregard the restaurant, just,
Restaurant, probably, anyway, it's just a little cafe, it's sort of like a coffee
Yeah.
establishment, so you could have, 4 to 6 people there.
You told us last time 12.
Yeah, I don't think it would be 12, I think 12 was for running the whole establishment.
Well, hello?
My question to him, was he asking about property management or running the cafe? His response was for the cafe, that's what I responded.
You said you were going to try to limit the tenants' parking on premises. And how exactly would you propose to do that?
Well, first of all, as I said, we don't think it will be necessary.
You just said that you propose to. If you don't think it's necessary, why would you even propose that?
What I said, and I'm very sure I said this, if it turns out that we needed to, we could do that.
There was no turns out part of it,
But the point is that there are many, many people who would like to occupy this property who don't have cars, who get to the scientific institutions in Woods Hole by bike, or to the restaurants they work at by bike or walking, or use public transportation. Those are the people who this is designed to serve. And enough of those people will rent here, or they could be a requirement if you don't have enough spaces, and we think we will without having to impose a restriction, we can restrict. You have a rent to right to.
How are you going to enforce that? And where are they going to park? Across the street?
If all the
In
parking-
someone else's parking?
If all the parking spaces are, first of all, I've managed these properties for 25 years. That's
Not
the
like
very
this.
Pardon me?
Not like this one?
Yes, I have.
With limited parking as this? Name one.
I've managed properties like this that have no parking in downtown areas. Come
Yeah.
visit my property in Sacramento, California, 127 rooms like this, no on-site parking. We got to get away from parking. We need housing. We need housing. So if someone came up to us and all our parking spots were full and they had a car, we'd tell them we can't rent to them unless they find another place for their car. That another place could be, look out the window. How many parking spaces do we have in our downtown area that aren't filled at night? I haven't taken account, but there's probably 200. Probably 200 parking spaces that don't have anyone at night. Let's forget about worrying about cars.
That's
Let's more
strictly
worry
nighttime.
about people. Let's worry about
You're
people.
going to be open in the daytime?
Is what going to be open in the daytime?
Just place, I mean, somebody can find a place to
Well, they're
park at night,
24
but
hours
what
a day.
about the active periods during the
They'll find-
daytime?
If they want to stay there at the low rents that we have, and they have a car, and we don't have any more parking spaces, they'll find a place.
I'm sorry, I just have some problems with this. You made a statement that we're disregarding our professionals. 10 minutes ago, I heard Mr. Fox disregard our town planner, who is our professional. And I think the comment was, he didn't vote on this, and he's no different than any other citizen. I certainly can't agree with that either.
The question I've got is, it's going to relate to the density calculations, either under the commercial accommodations analysis that was performed by the town planner, the mixed residential, the Mr. Cod, or using the hybrid approach. And either way, it just seems like the density is higher than what is permitted under the bylaw. And it seems that the planning board, for whatever reason, kind of disregarded that. We're charged with applying the bylaw as to the density.
I'd
We're
be
stuck
happy
with
to
what, we
speak
don't
to
draft
that.
the bylaws, we merely interpret and give relief. Can you just speak to that issue, please?
Thank you very much. The bylaw establishes densities for all kinds of uses. And they are spatial densities with regard to buildings and lot coverage and so on, and there are other restrictions as to the number of units, 6 units per acre of affordable housing, all sorts of requirements. The Mr. Cod bylaw isn't subject to these other provisions. The Mr. Cod bylaw, somewhat like 40B, allows denser development. Nothing in the bylaw says that if you have 20 units per acre, you've used up your potential for the property. The bylaw calls on the planning board, and if a special permit is needed here, your use of your good discretion and common sense and consideration of all the factors to decide what will work on the site. There can be uses on this site that would require much more parking. If all you had was a commercial accommodations, as the town planner says, you could have 62 units under the formula. Not Mr. Cud, no affordable housing. But you could also, by right, if you have that commercial accommodations by special permit, the bylaw allows a restaurant with not more than 2 times the number of seats, 2 times the number of rooms. So if you had 62 seats, you could have a restaurant with it, with 124 seats. If this whole building, which is a pretty large building, were offices, it'd be a much more dense use than what we're proposing in terms of traffic generation. This bylaw was passed to allow the creation, to encourage the creation of affordable housing, and as I said earlier, as an alternative to 40Bs. For the town planner now to submit to you at the last moment, I would add, so I've hardly looked at it, calculations that say you've used up the allowed use of the property with your commercial accommodations, or alternatively with your multifamily housing, so you can only have a little bit more. That calculation isn't provided for in the Mr. Cod bylaw. And boy, this is not the way to get to affordable housing. The one other commercial Mr. Cod project that's been approved in town, not built, is 15 units of multifamily housing on Main Street next to the Peking Palace restaurant. Well, what used to be called Peking Palace. And that has 15 units, which is the maximum number of units allowed. But it also has a commercial use allowed, 900 square feet in the front of the property for some commercial use. This is for the planning board in its site plan review to decide whether there's sufficient parking, whether the uses work, whether they're compatible with one another, and to limit the development by looking at non-Mr. Cod restrictions in the bylaw is really defeating the purpose of the bylaw.
I guess I'm not trying to defeat the purpose. In 247.5B1, the underlying zoning shall remain in effect, and the associated regulations for use, dimension, and all other provisions of the zoning bylaw governing those districts shall remain in full force.
Right, if it's
And
not
that's what we're trying,
if
I keep
it's-
wrestling with is,
it's not a Mr. Cod project, the bylaw stays in effect. And you can
Mr.
then,
Mr. Cod supersedes in a fairly narrow manner. Is, your interpretation is it's got a little bit more gray.
supersedes the bylaw, and if the planning board grants a site plan review, you're allowed to do it.
Go ahead.
If you had to limit the use with the kind of formula that I gather the town planner has given you, wouldn't there be some indication of that in Mr. Cod? But there isn't. There isn't. There's not a provision that says you can have 20 units, but if you want to have mixed use with it, which is clearly allowed, you'll have to have fewer than 20 units per acre, because you've used up your density with just the housing units. It's not what the bylaw says.
Could you describe where guests would park? Any guests that would be visiting people that live there? Where would the guests park?
Within the 59 spaces that we have.
That's right. That's right.
So if your spaces, though, are taken up by people who reside there, your staff, people visiting the restaurant, there may be no spaces left for guests?
If there were 71 parking spaces, and we have 59, which isn't a lot fewer, if there were 71, that would be one per unit. And if it was a commercial accommodations unit, you'd also be able to have in the building a restaurant, 71 times 2, with 142 seats. But the parking requirement would be the parking requirement for a commercial accommodations facility. We just don't think that there will be that many people needing parking spaces, and the traffic report by a professional, though Mr. Finneran doesn't give much credence to it, says we have enough parking.
You said earlier that affordable housing is historically overparked. We just had an approved one
That's
come
what I
back
said.
and request, you said that. We just had, okay.
I don't
all
think
right,
so,
either
Mr.
way.
I
You-
said that in communities throughout the state, throughout the country, are lowering the parking requirements.
Well, we just had one come back requesting more that had been approved and in existence for a year and a half or two, and they found that, that to be incorrect. And I mean, you made another statement. We need to get away from everyone owning a car. Do you have a car?
I have an electric vehicle parked right outside.
It's a car, isn't it?
Classified as a car, yes, it is.
Mr. Chairman, we could talk for a long time about these issues, but I think it's important that the many people who'd like to speak get an opportunity. What I'd
We
like
have
to
public
do
comment at this
is
point.
reserve the opportunity to speak after others have spoken.
Public comment. Sir, please.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Lingefelter. I'm the Executive Director of the Falmouth EDIC. Offices are at 20 Academy Lane. As was referenced earlier, EDIC was one of the 22, 25 letters of support that were submitted at the original application. I was asked by my board of directors on Tuesday to also come to speak to the board this evening because of the importance of this project. For those of you that aren't familiar with the EDIC, one of our missions is to support the local business community. And we think there's nothing more important in today's environment than the attraction and retention of employees. We think the project at 545 Main Street is not only a unique and creative use of a vacant building, but we think it could be a critical component to that attraction and retention of a very, very important class of employees that would be able to support the businesses in downtown Falmouth. The walkability of the site, the bikeability of the site, all are, we think, outstanding attributes. And we also think that it's a very, very important component for workforce housing in a very challenging environment. So we wanted to come out and restate our support for the project. We hope that you will approve the application with the urgency that the Falmouth's housing crisis deserves. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Palmer. I live on Silver Beach Avenue in North Falmouth. I'm a postdoctoral scientist at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole, and perhaps unsurprisingly, I'd like to speak in favor of this project. There's a whole bunch of good things that I can say about this project. First and foremost is that a lot of us are quite excited about it, which is not always true of some of these projects. It would obviously benefit the community a great deal. Housing in the past few years has become quite critically short, as everybody is already aware. To address the issue of parking, I can speak from personal experience and say that the vast majority of people that come to the MBL and Hui do not do so with cars. Some of them do purchase cars when they arrive here, in finding that it's quite hard to get around, but Mr. Glasso has already elegantly provided opportunities for car share and transportation, so he's addressed that already. Yeah, I just think all things considered, I don't think we can delay on this project. Housing is so limited at this point, and everybody's feeling it. You know, I went to the select board meeting a couple months ago and somebody got up to ask why the fire station wasn't staffed, and I think we know why, right? People can't afford to live here. So, yeah, for those reasons, in support of this project.
Thank you.
Sarah Marola, Falmouth Heights. I'm also in approval of this project. I think in the specifics about cars, because it's affordable housing, some people can't afford cars, and if they have public transportation as an option, would prefer that. My roommate, for example, does not have a car. She walks to work, and the fact that in the winter, when it gets snowy and cold, the fact that there could be options to actually get around would be amazing. I think the thing that I really like is that there are places that you could stay for just 30 days. I move around in the summer and winter, so I can afford to live here. And oftentimes when you do that, you get stuck with a lease where if you find a place, you can't actually move because you have to oblige to your old lease, which means you're paying 2 rents at once. So the fact that I could stay somewhere for 30 days while I find somewhere else, and last summer I had to rely on my landlord to let me stay 2 extra months because I couldn't find housing for the winter. So just the idea that there's housing that you're not stuck in for a long time is an amazing thing to me.
Good evening, I'm John Keenan, principal of architectural firm Keenan and Kenny. We worked on the project since Mike hired us almost 16 months ago. And it seems to me, the way the bylaw was changed to make the planning board talk about planning, talk about parking, talk about traffic, that's more of a planning issue for them to issue a special permit. I always thought the Board of Appeals was more of the legality of bylaws and zoning and things like that, but not to really speak to the planning of it. So it seems to me the new bylaw makes perfect sense. We spent 14 months talking with the town planner. He had a lot to say, a lot to say. It would have been much sooner approval, probably, if he didn't have so much to say. But we'll talk to every board, every person who has a say in this for 14 months. So for me to start to hear you rehashing everything we did for 14 months to get a special permit for the planning board, it doesn't seem correct. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, I'm very in favor of the project, but I just don't see why we're doing this in this manner. We've done what the town bylaw asked us to do. It was approved after much planning and much discussion. It has a special permit, and you're kind of starting over. All these questions have been answered. Thank you.
Respond to that.
Hi, my name is Hannah Vanderschuren, 49 Glenwood Avenue, Falmouth. And I would also like to speak in favor of this project. Also on behalf of the J1 students who would benefit for this project but are not able to be here tonight. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the crisis here in the summer all over the Cape, where these students are sometimes having to live in church basements, and their employers are constantly trying to find accommodations for them. And both as a year-round resident here and somebody who knows how much this town benefits from these workforce employees that come in the summer, they desperately need a place to stay, and it would be really nice if there was an option here for them. And they're also students, you know, like I made it through college without a car. They're coming internationally. I don't think they'd be super likely to have a car. And as somebody up and coming and young in this town, like you find a way if you don't have that resource, and it's really a great thing to see that they're trying to find accommodations for these students. So that's it.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Murphy. I served as a selectman in this town for 9 years. I own 3 restaurants in this town over the years between my wife and I. One was in North Falmouth, one was in downtown, and one was in Woods Hole. I've got to tell you, anyone that ever talked to me about parking, I would say, I'm going to give you a tin ear because I own a restaurant in Woods Hole that doesn't have parking. Neither does my help have parking, nor my customers. But
when someone wants to do something, they find a way. And my help would find a way to get to work, whether it was on a bike, get a carpool, or something of that nature. I never cried about my customers finding a place to park because we were very busy, and they found a place to go, or they rode another means of transportation. I will say to you this, that I put the two of these people together, Mr. Mamry and Mr. Galasso. But the reason this building is vacant is just the reason why Mr. Galasso is trying to get this project. Mr. Mamry's family had three nursing facilities in this town. It was very, very hard for him to staff those facilities because of the one major reason: staff housing. Not all positions are skilled positions. And I can also tell you that when I had my restaurant, I was fortunate enough to find a room at Sipowicz Campgrounds to rent for two of my skilled employees. Those employees, I found a way to get them to Woods Hole and then back. They lived the entire summer without a car, and they worked 6 to 7 days a week. Now, you can find every reason in the world why this shouldn't happen, but you need to find one good reason why it should, because this is something that's needed. This is a different type of project. Some of those zoning bylaws were written for total different things than what is currently proposed. So I hope you take that all under advisement, and I thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Yes?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were on this Board of Selectmen and the parking from the steamship authority contract ran out and it was time to renew it, I suggested that you double the price, and if they didn't blink, you double it again. But during those same negotiations, did you not carve out, was it 20 parking spaces for employees of restaurants in Woods Hole? Is that not correct?
Just so we're quite clear, I didn't carve out anything.
It happened during your tenure.
Town staff did that to help address that. But honestly, 20 spaces in Woods Hole for workers is nothing. I had 12 to 15 people working per shift. Take that and multiply it all around to the number of restaurants that are there. And my restaurant was one of the smaller ones. So that's where...
That did happen as part of the Board of Selectmen's business during your tenure.
I don't think this is really, I don't think this is a relevant question.
Statements weren't quite correct.
Well, quite candidly,
there is a,
that back parking lot at the steamship is owned by the town of Falmouth.
I understand.
And I would think originally and honestly, the revenue means nothing because it really should be set aside for the people of Falmouth, whether they're employees somewhere or someone who wants to go to Woods Hole, get on the bike path and go from there. We're going to get into philosophical discussions, Mr. Fenneman?
I'm being factual.
Oh.
And I also suggested
I'm
that
going
the
to
town
stop
could
this line of
excavate.
questioning and the answers. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
We
Murphy.
need
Incidentally, I never
accuracy.
knew that public comment took questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sir.
Good morning, good evening. It's almost morning, isn't it? No, not quite.
A few more hours.
Good evening, Robert Miscali, T-Ticket. I'm speaking tonight as a resident, not as a member of the Select Board. But I will also mention I'm on the EDIC and concur with what Mr. Lingerfelter said earlier about the EDIC's position with respect to the project. I think it's a good project. I think we all appreciate the concerns that the board members have with respect to parking and the need for parking, but there is a balancing here, as Mr. Ahmet said. I think the law requires, and I think we need housing for our workers, for people who are coming into the town, whether they be fire, whether they be at the hospital, police, restaurants, of course. So I just want to say that I think it's a good project. I think Mr. Galasso has gone to great lengths to
deal with the parking issue. I think it's innovative with what he's done with Envoy and how he wants to put that in place. So I think it's a good project. I think you should balance it in favor of the need here in town for housing, not be so overly concerned with parking, with the practicalities of who will probably be residents here, not needing so much parking. Thank you.
Sir? You got skipped a couple times, I apologize.
Rich Peel, on behalf of the Falmouth Village Association and also the store manager at LaRue Kitchen. I have to say, Falmouth is very fortunate in a town on the Cape here. We have first-class medical, we have world-class science that happens right here. But if we don't offer accommodations for this, for new medicine and young science, then that new medicine and young science is going to go elsewhere. And it will go to somewhere where it can prosper and live and have a family. The result is that these institutions are going to struggle to exist. The very institutions that Falmouth is known for will struggle to exist. As a small business operator, I am dependent on seasonal employees. I've had J1 staff who are living in Dickensian situations. And it is, through these past years, 7 years on the street, it's really become harder and harder for me to find staffing. The results of this are that I have to restrict my business hours because I can't find staffing. I have to, when I restrict my business hours, people who come to visit Falmouth see my store is closed. When people see businesses are closed, it's a very easy line to say, Falmouth is closed. It is all too easy to put up hurdles on things. But when it comes to adaptive reuse, you have to take an alternate thought process. You have to think about ways to remove these hurdles and guide the process through. As you can tell, I am for this project, for my business, and for my town. Please support and let this project go through. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alberto Toselli, and I own and run with my family a restaurant, Osteria La Civetta, here on Main Street, a few steps away. Of course, obviously, I strongly support the project because it gives us all in the hospitality business, not just restaurant, but hotels, everybody, some help and the chance to improve our businesses. Hospitality business is one of the most important activity on the Cape, and our community thrives and benefit from it, of course. And the hospitality business is one of our priority, I think. The main reason why we are open 5 days a week, and I saw the gentleman before me had the same problem, is it's even during the high season, June through September, is, as you can imagine, we are short. There is a shortage of workforce. And again, if you drive on Main Street in Falmouth in July and August, and you see restaurant closed Monday and Tuesday like we are, or whatever, closed, what the tourists think of Falmouth, closed in August, closed in July, what happened? And I also heard that some hotels or motels, if you stay more than one day, I mean, from 2 days on, they don't make your bed or don't change your towels because they don't have staff to do that. And one more thing, before COVID, there was an offset between the business and the workforce. Okay, we were open in summer 7 days a week. We had enough workforce. What happened is that after COVID, the business grew. Not just us, all the business in the restaurant business. I'm talking about the restaurant, but hotels and motels and B&B, of course. And the workforce started shrinking. So there started 3 years ago a gap between the business and the workforce. And the gap is getting bigger and bigger. And we are going to face an emergency. As to the J1, same problem. We don't even try anymore to get in touch with these students because we can't find a place for them to stay. And the problem is that we only hope that they come to us as a second job. Usually they work in the morning, I'm talking about the summer, at Dunkin' Donuts or Stop and Shop. So some way they can find a place to stay, and they come to us and work in the afternoon and in the night. And they already found a place because the visa required for them to, before they come here, at the application to have a place. And we don't even try anymore to look for J1 student. And we only hope they come and to us as a second job. Same problem with the full-time workers. It's very hard today to find someone who works in a restaurant. It's not like Master Chef, those shows on TV, that's fiction. It's a hard job, and a lot of people don't want to do it anymore. And but if you find someone from off Cape who, by chance, wants to do the job, then you can find where he can stay. And if this kind of job, it's hard to go, to commute. But if you see the Bourne Bridge or the traffic light at the hospital, they are there. Traffic jams are there to remind us that this is going to become an emergency if it's not already is. Thank you so much.
Any other member of the public tonight wish to comment?
Still on parking because it seems pretty important. Let's look at numbers, actually. Let's assume that the number of spaces you'd like to see is 71 for 71 units plus 12 for a restaurant, a cafe in this case, 83. You know that the bylaw allows by right a 25% reduction in the required parking. Section 240.14.1F 3A, the required number of, well, first of all, it has a parking reduction chart. And it allows that reduction. If you have more than 50 spaces, you can reduce the parking by 25% if you have open space. Well, we're providing that whole open space in front of the building. We're stuck with the building where it is, well back from the street. The town bylaw itself says we can get by with 25% reduction. And if we took the 25% reduction from 83, that would be 62. 62 spaces. And the bylaw goes on to say in the very next sentence, the required number of spaces may be further reduced by a special permit from the Board of Appeals upon the board's determination that special circumstances such as shared use of a parking lot by activities having different peak demand times render a lesser provision adequate. We have a lot of special conditions in this case. We're providing a rideshare service. We're providing electric cars that can be used by the residents and therefore shared. We're on public transportation. This is an affordable housing project where the parking needs are less. So by right, 62 spaces. You can get down to 59. You're allowed to reduce it. So you want to stick with the bylaw? Think about the fact that the bylaw allows this kind of reduction by right to 62. I'd like you to think about that.
Can I? If you read that.
I've read it.
Reduction by right. The off-street parking required for service, retail, business, or professional uses. This is commercial accommodation and it's housing. I mean, it doesn't exactly fit in there.
Well, certainly the restaurant part of it does.
Yeah, but
We've-
it's only a part. So that's not entirely correct what
We
you
think we can
say
do
there.
it. And it's worth the approval to, and if we have a parking problem, there are ways we can address it, which we've discussed.
Question I've got, I guess, that I'm kind of wrestling with is that you obviously had pushback from the building inspector about whether or not commercial accommodations was applicable to this project or not. Why not just resubmit as a 40B? Request waivers and proceed that way. You know you're going to get those. It would make this very much easier for the board to.
This is a
looking at
pretty
that-
unusual
looking at that
project.
lens.
This is an unusual project, and I think Mr. Galasso can speak better to this, but we're not sure we could do this under 40B. And we also, the financing is different. That's what Mr. Cod was for, Mr. Chairman. It was to allow the town to deal with a situation like this, to encourage people to do affordable housing. Mr. Glasser can speak better than I can.
Can I address that?
Let him answer, then I'll get to you, Mark.
Okay. So in order to get a letter from Mass Housing to start the 40B process, they require a certain percentage of the units to be 3 bedrooms. So that's not what we're planning here.
Follow-up question?
Yeah. You know what, I'm just going to address it broadly. A gentleman earlier spoke about an alternative thought process, and that's what this Mr. Cod is. And Mr. Cod allows you 33 total units. You've come in here going above and beyond Mr. Cod with 71 units. It doesn't fit. And I'd like to ask you, are you familiar with any other project in the state of Massachusetts that mixes affordable housing and commercial accommodations?
That doesn't mean it's not appropriate, because no one else has done it, so.
That's not the question.
Yeah.
Are you
We've got a
familiar with
building-
any?
we've got a building, and the board is invited to take a tour of the building anytime you like to see what we have there.
Can you answer my question?
Do I know of any?
Yeah.
I do not know of any. That doesn't mean that it's
And
not.
do you think that might be for a good reason?
I don't know the reason why that may not be.
Let me add to that, that the commercial accommodations, as defined in our bylaw, includes boarding houses with rentals by 30 days. Mr. Peterson earlier said, he said, I'm trying to thread the needle. Thread the needle. You can do this project. Mr. Morse, you said, why don't you just come in as a 40B? You're suggesting,
You can't
we know
the
we could get
financing.
that,
That's a perfectly acceptable answer. I'm just curious. I understand that 40Bs are
there are
entirely different
reasons we
animal for
can't.
financing.
This project should be done. It's a great reuse of the building. Thread the needle and get it done.
Yeah, the other reason, again, to answer your question on the 40B is that we'd have to have, all the units would have to be leased on a yearly basis. That doesn't help us on our seasonal housing needs that we have. So it is different. I know it's complicated, but it's desperately needed.
I don't disagree.
So-
There is a clear need for 30 or 90-day
Absolutely.
rentals in the summertime. I'm not arguing that point. I just want to make sure, that for the record, for my own edification, that the issue is financing. If, you know,
Yeah.
the other concern is this is essentially a case of first impression with the use of this particular bylaw, and we have some growing pains. I don't think anyone on the board is against affordable housing, but at the same time, I think people are a little apprehensive about not implying the zoning law that we have before us, but
You know, like I said earlier, I've been doing this for almost 40 years now. What always scares me is that but.
I will also contend that, as Mr. Ahmed has pointed out, we are a board of relief, so.
Yeah.
Do we have additional questions, or?
I do. And although I cannot vote on this particular one, how many of the 26 dwelling units will go towards our affordable housing stock here in town? 6?
No, all of them,
All of them?
yes.
They'll all be approved by the state?
Yes. They're all 27, right, all 27 of the studios and one-bedrooms will be on the, can be on the list, are eligible.
So they will go towards safe harbor?
Yes, they will. Yep. And we are working on getting the other, what we're calling the commercial accommodations approved too, to be on the list. That's something that we're still working on.
Just to explain to you what that is, there are units of varying sizes. If you looked at the plans, you know that. The state housing department has standards for the size of apartments and what needs to be included in that kitchen and so on. And what they've done at this point is said, well, this is the staff. They've said that, is it 26 or 33 of the units are large enough to qualify for that. Mr. Galasso hopes that through the negotiation, which I'm confident to create this new kind of housing, not that it's new, but it's new for their program, we'll get more of the units as qualified.
So, may I follow up question, Mr. So, assuming that this board might vote to approve this, I mean, would it be conditioned appropriately so that you must obtain the approvals from the state for affordable housing? And if you don't, then it has to come back to us?
Absolutely. If this project doesn't go forward.
No.
If
Let's just say this board, I'm not voting on it, let's just say this board votes approval. Could it be conditioned that if you don't get the affordable housing units as approved by the state, that you would have to come back?
Well, are you talking the number of units that we've proposed?
Yes.
Yes, that's of course, it is a requirement of Mr. Cod that all of the housing units for the rentals, and those are only rentals, it would be a different application if we were talking for sale housing. Of course, we're not doing that. That all the rentals have to qualify, have to be on at the SHI. That's a condition, and you can repeat that in your decision for sure.
And let's just talk about parking for a minute, since that seems to be a real problem on this board right now. This is rental. If the parking fails and cannot support the people renting, then your project fails. Is that correct?
And that's, yes, I'm going to say yes, but that's why we have all these other types of alternatives to single car.
Exactly. So just because it may not be, and I agree with everything you have said, Mr. Harmon, that the parking spaces can be reduced. And the practical side of this thing is, if this does not work, if the parking spaces are too few, of course, it could hurt downtown, further hurt downtown, because there won't be more parking spaces, but your business, which this is, it's rental, will fail at the same time. Would that be an accurate statement?
Sure, it could.
Thank you.
You know, one possibility, just to work together on this going forward, you know, you can have a review in a year, 2 years after the property is occupied, to review the success of the parking and to discuss improvements. No, you're not going to take away the special permit if you do that, but we can be obligated to work on it. And in fact, if there were a problem, Mr. Galasso would seek alternatives. Historically, the nursing home used spaces at the church next door, which generally has loads of parking except for a few hours a year.
Not to argue the point, but that is not part of your plan here.
It is not. It is
You have not
something-
negotiated anything with the church.
It's not possible, they're
We've had a lot
nonprofit.
of-
I get it. But he hasn't. I don't know why we're talking about the church, because
I'm just suggesting that there are alternatives, and if we need to, we will solve them. We don't think we will need to.
Thank you.
Sam, go right ahead.
So you're guaranteeing 26 units to add to our stock?
Yes?
Guaranteed, and you said they may be more.
That would be on the subsidized housing list. You understand that, first of all, the number of residential units in the building as proposed is 26, with 45 commercial accommodation units that would be rented for a minimum of 30 days at a time. We're not talking about weekend rentals. We're not talking about, Airbnb type of thing. We're talking about boarding houses. Okay, but 26 will qualify as residential housing for the DHCD.
Because
the
of
state.
size and bathrooms?
Yes. Correct. Well, other units also have bathrooms, and they're going to have kitchens as well. These
many
are not,
units
and most
don't.
of these are not so-called single-room occupancy without any of those facilities. But 26 qualify as dwelling units for the state. That is the affordable housing project, of which a minimum of 25% need to be rented through a lottery and at affordable housing, the whole process. But all of them would be subject to a regulatory agreement, and all of them, all 26, will be on the SHI. Mr. Galasso hopes that the state will approve even more than the 26. So 26, as proposed, we're saying is a minimum.
And these are one bedrooms? One bedroom?
Some are studios, the larger studios.
And Mass Housing thinks that's okay? You only have one bedroom or a studio?
Yes.
I mean, usually they're like 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom.
Has a 40B, you're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a 40B.
Well, it's still affordable housing. It's the
Well,
same ballgame.
Yes,
Still get on the list.
yes, we've had that discussion, and they've agreed to 26. We think Mr. Galasso thinks it
A
can
few
be
more
more.
can qualify.
It may be more.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, one quick. Do you have a letter from, which agency is giving you the approval?
Well, the Department of Housing and Community Development is no longer called that.
Yeah.
It's now the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, EOHLC. And we've had considerable correspondence.
But do you have a letter agreeing to the 26 units?
I believe the town planner does. I do not
No,
have
no,
a
no.
letter for the town planner because issue was brought up, the town planner.
But this is critical to everything that's going on right now, affordable housing.
Your approval will be subject to that. That's a condition. That's a condition. Don't, look, we'll get you what and we think it's, we've had a lot of discussion about this, and the town planner has agreed that 26 qualify. If you need to see that, we can get that for you. But in any case, you can and should condition your approval on these things, and
Including getting that letter.
We have the Secretary of Housing there, tour it and stuff, so I think we can get a letter from them if we need it.
If you just develop this project as Mr. Cod is intended, with 20 units per acre, that would give us 33 affordable units. But instead, you're looking for 71, which
This
is
project
more than
won't be-
twice.
this project won't be
It's a contrivance of
This project won't be
Mr.
developed with that number of units. It won't be financed, it won't be constructed, it can't be.
And you're going to have a hard time convincing me that it's going to be feasible. I think you're asking for too much with not enough parking.
Any additional?
Prefer that we reduce the number of units down to 59 and lose housing and have cars? That's the alternative.
No, I mean, we've talked about this multiple times on other projects. Is there any opportunity to get the 10 or 12 employees to have some sort of leased parking off-site? You have timeline to get those agreements in place. This is what we're trying to get, I can only speak for myself.
Maybe you're saying, but we would, of course, need to know if the board is saying, if we had an agreement for a dozen off-site parking spaces, would this project be approved as submitted?
I'm only one person that's looking for parking.
Well, is that the problem? Is the problem 12 parking spaces?
I'm going to ask if there's any additional follow-up questions to the proposal, and then let's have some discussion to get into what may or may not work. Frank, any follow-up questions?
Not at this time, no.
Mark?
No, I mean, we passed Mr. Cod to do the things that they claim to want to do. And, I mean, we extended from 6 or 8 per acre to 20. And now they're looking for, what, 47? It's a bridge too far.
Mr. John?
You've heard my concerns.
Tony?
Read mine.
The only question I would have is for the commercial units, do you intend to strictly limit to people who are intending to work in Falmouth during the summertime so that they're not rented to somebody who may come down for vacation and just be renting a room for a month?
Yeah, our intent is to lease them to people that work in our community. I'm not sure that we want to have a condition that would just say they'd have to be from Falmouth. There's a lot of people who work at MBL, may not be residents of Falmouth and stuff, but.
No, I don't mean being residents, but if, for example, it becomes a vacation destination, you could potentially rent out those spaces such that the workforce still doesn't have that as an option.
I mean, two people who are coming to town to vacation.
Correct.
For more than 30 days. That's.
Well, you are limiting it to 30 days, a minimum, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Right, so if somebody wanted to vacation for a month on a lesser budget, would they potentially use up a room that someone who is here to work would use?
Good question.
We typically don't get those type of people that stay in our establishments that we have. You know, we don't cater, we don't market to tourist trade and stuff. You know, we're intended for what people that work in our community.
Right, so would you be limiting the rentals to people who have jobs here?
I think if we could do that legally, maybe we would do that.
I think there's going to be some Fair Housing Act issues
there are a lot
with
of
that sort
concerns
condition,
about-
and the red flag for me is going up on that issue. It's a fair point, and clearly the testimony is their intent is to do workforce housing, but
Can't limit a commercial
there's some federal laws that I think could be something
You know,
problematic on that issue.
commercial accommodations is an allowed use in the district. We'd have 62 of those units, plus a big restaurant. We're not planning that type of commercial accommodation. We're planning a boarding house type of use. And I think at some point, the board, the town needs to work with Mr. Galasso, who's got the track record to do the right thing and to do this kind of housing, so that we can move forward with it.
Let's have some board discussion here about kind of where we are about this project. We'll start with you, Frank.
Well, I would like to find out if we feel like we're going to grant this special permit. There's a lot of discussion. Some of it seems positive, some of it seems negative, and an awful lot of it is ambiguous. So I'm not even sure what this board is thinking right now. I know that, as you know, I previously presented a motion that we don't need to be doing this, but since we're doing it, I want to participate in it and make sure that we get some kind of a favorable result out of this. So I would just like to find out where we stand on this. I'm in favor of granting this subject to conditions.
Again, I'll say it again. Mr. Cod stretched the allowable units per acre from 6 to 8. I mean, from 6 or 8 to 20, which is an extreme, and I'm not saying it's, I think it's good, but they want to double that again? I mean, there has to be limits. If anybody here thinks for a minute that this isn't gonna cause multiple parking issues all over that vicinity, you haven't looked at it close enough. You gotta consider everyone else in town.
Didn't want you to cut you off. Didn't mean to cut you off. You don't, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I mean,
I have the same issues as Mark, and I want to be guaranteed that those 26 are going to go towards our stock numbers. And I don't have anything in front of me that says that. I think the planning board did condition it, if I'm correct.
There are about 9 conditions.
But 26 must qualify. Was that
Yes.
one? of the- Yeah.
and I just,
Which
sorry.
makes me feel a little better that it has a condition.
But the trade-off is, we give them 30 extra commercial units plus. There's just no equity here.
Scott?
I wish Mr. Cod was a little cleaner. Again, this one's coming before us, and we're trying to figure it out on the fly, I guess, to some degree. Mr. Finneran's right on his observations or his reading of it from my perspective, but I'm willing to maybe bend a little bit more. I just don't want the project to ultimately be pushing parking out onto a Walgreens or other abutters. I just don't think that that's necessarily fair. The goal here is to get affordable housing. I think, we've heard the comments from everybody. I think everybody here on the board wants that to happen. Whether the planning board will supersede this board in the future or not, that'll play itself out. But I'm going to try and thread the needle here, but I need a little more give on how we can get some additional parking so the obligation doesn't fall to other abutters and cause the issue that we're having already. The town needs a traffic saturation plan so we can be better informed We just don't have that, and it makes it difficult for us in these reviews, so.
Well, we need one.
Agree.
Absolutely need one.
Bad.
And I mean, there's more than just the parking issue here. I'm gonna repeat it again, because it's just so obvious. We stretched it to 20 units per acre. Now we're looking for, what, 48? I mean, to use a physics term, that's beyond the modulus. I mean, it just,
So,
it's, God, it's outrageous. It really is.
I believe that this could be approved, but needs to be heavily conditioned. I share your concerns about the parking. I've had rentals where it says, okay, you have this apartment in Boston, but it comes with no parking spot. I think that the leases can establish who's getting a parking spot or not. I'm not prepared to vote an approval with conditions tonight. This is gonna be one that I wanna make sure that we've thoroughly vetted, make sure that any conditions that are in there are gonna be enforceable and equitable. I think that it would be better if the applicant could come back with perhaps some leased parking spots to alleviate the concerns. But given that it's an existing building, they're not increasing the footprint or the size, they're just remodeling what's inside. It's addressing a compelling need.
And I don't argue with that at all. I mean, we own motels and restaurants growing up. I've worked in the hospitality business. I know people. I know how it is. But I mean, if you're talking about conditioning something like this, firstly, some of the condition certainly has to be the reduction in the number of units. You're not gonna be able to police this thing, and it's gonna be a parking nightmare. And I mean, anybody who doesn't think that's the case needs to take the 10,000-foot overview, because
Strawman.
I think it would be helpful if the board would vote to instruct the administrator to draft a positive decision. And it would be subject to our providing additional parking off-site.
I'll comment on that right now.
You can tell us the number of spaces you'd like to, or we'll certainly, we'll have to go get it. We have people we can talk to who have been reluctant to do it. We'll have to make that happen. But if there are at least 4 votes of the board not to approve the project tonight, but to have a favorable decision drafted for its consideration, with an additional parking requirement, then we would hope we can satisfy that and get the board's approval at a future meeting fairly soon.
We're here to deliberate this and all matters. Since I've been on this board, we've had 2 draft decisions, which basically means the decision's made without us, and they both come back to bite us in the posterior.
Sure
I
do.
think even entertaining that option was a dereliction of our duty and just a bad idea.
Then why doesn't the board just vote, if there are 4
The way you want.
members willing to do so, to approve the projects subject to a condition that
We need
there
to
be
discuss
additional
those.
off-site parking provided?
And unit reductions?
I'm sorry, I
You're more
didn't
than
hear you.
unit
Mr.
reductions, you're more than double the Mr. Cod.
As the planning
I'm
board
just
has
amazed that you're even coming in here with this thing, to be honest with you.
We have the building that we have, it works. We need it all.
Doesn't work if you don't get a permit.
Suzanne, you wanted to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to continue, as the chair said, to get it together here with our board and do this at a different time. And I don't want to make a draft decision. That got us in big trouble.
I'll second that motion.
Do we want to solicit proposed conditions from the applicant, or do we want to just asking the question of the board?
Well, I honestly town meeting passed Mr. Cod to relax all these not standards, what are restrictions. And for them to come in here with more than double that, to substantially reduce the number of units has to be a condition here. We don't have the authority, and
Jim, like you said, maybe we could have a different parking. He could come up with a different parking agreement and maybe some reduction. Doesn't have to be substantial in my mind, but some. Those would be the two things I would be.
So we're asking the applicant to come up with an alternative parking plan or off-site parking or a parking
Something,
plan.
Something, yeah.
Okay.
I don't
a
know if anyone
reduction in
else
the
has
number of
anything.
units.
Do we want input from town council regarding the density, if it's permissible or not? Or do we have the authority to grant?
I think we should just see what, I think the idea of putting the burden on the applicant to come in with conditions or proposed parking, alternative parking and reduction in units, we should see what they're willing to do.
Yeah.
Not unreasonable. Agree.
In my mind, Mr. Cod kind of covers, I think, the densities.
Hugely
Yeah.
expanded beyond Mr. Cod,
Right.
which was a huge expansion in the first place. I mean,
But like, that's the threading of the needle we need to
we're
figure
trying
out
to
too.
fit a camel through the eye of a needle.
Pretty much. Anyway, anything down this way?
No, I think that I would be in agreement for that.
Mr. Rahman, are you willing to come up with some proposed conditions, as well as an alternative parking plan, or explore the option of off-site parking, just to reduce the number?
Yes.
Do we have a date in mind?
January 18th. You will need consent to continue to that date.
Do we have consent to continue that date, Mr. Rahman? Yes. Thank you.
Motion to continue to January 18th?
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? It's a vote. Mr. Rahman, can we get your signature on a extension form? I'm gonna suggest we take a 10-minute break to allow for personal needs and things to clear out.
Got it.
Hello. Apologies for the heavy hand. That was for the benefit of FCTV at their request. We have new hearings, two remaining on the schedule. 09623 Odell, 54 Sam Turner Road, Hatchville, requesting a special permit to raise and rebuild the existing dwelling and detached garage. Mr. Finneran.
We have, as well as 70 Philadelphia that was continued. There's an issue with this property. There's only one lot corner marked, so it's not properly staked, so it doesn't warrant us continuing.
Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of continuing on, feeling it was sufficiently done?
I will speak in favor of continuing.
Ma'am?
On the other one, I would not, but this one is a pretty big area. You could see where the garage was going. I couldn't really see where the other one was, the septic, the new leaching. Isn't there a new leaching field area?
Talking about 54 Sam Turner. We're
Oh,
not-
the other one.
We're not
Oh, yeah.
talking about
I'm off ag-
Roberts.
I'm off again. I was at
No.
Robert's house.
No, there's only one corner in the lot. There's
Oh, yeah.
nothing down on the pond front.
Oh, yeah. This is the one. You're right. There was missing. There was too many missing ones this week. You're right.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, you drove up and the group did, at first, I had never seen so many stakes. So I
Right.
was like, this is great, but I went to the four corners and only
They
one
were
corner
gone.
had a stake that was
Right.
marked
That's
for
right.
the lot.
I'm at
So-
Robert's house.
And the pond front was
I
totally
went back
devoid.
again tonight prior to the meeting, so I went twice.
Wow, good job.
Well, not that I
Went
wanted
to the
to.
wrong house.
Mr. Bunker, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. They were staked, possibly got pulled out, but My guy took pictures of them, showed them to me. They
You
might
have
have been
pictures of them?
farther before you reach the driveway. There's a lot corner well before you reach the driveway. and-
That's the one that's still existing, Tom, so that's the only one that's left.
There's a lot corner further, it was there, I saw it.
No.
And down the property line, the south property line, he marked the concrete bound that's down by the pond, was fully marked.
No.
It was. It was fully marked. I saw it.
I walked the beach 4 times, again today, quite honestly, and plenty of lot lines, but only one
Yeah, it
significant
was
lot
an
corner.
old concrete bound down by the shore of the pond.
Yeah.
And I saw it being pulled.
There was a lot line right next to that marker there, or rock, for lack of a better word, but it didn't say lot corner.
Lot line.
So out of the 4 lot corners, there's only one that was marked lot corner. From my perspective,
Same,
the
I
other
went
people
back
can
again.
go back and talk.
And I was also curious, as it's been surveyed twice. Obviously, there was a number of older stakes there, obviously more than a year old.
We had staked it for we did the septic system upgrade, more than a year ago or so, and there were some older stakes that you saw. The leaching field, I mean, that's not a subject of this review, really.
No, I was just gonna comment that and I have a picture in my phone, the previous survey with the old grade stakes, the magic marker is gone. But the one that seemed obviously was a corner was 2 feet, actually 25 inches off from this survey. But it could have been there for another reason. I don't know. But regardless, there was only one corner, one property corner. And
The gray one, the older gray one, was the limit of work for the leaching for the septic system.
that's the one all the way up on the road next to the.
It's up on the
corner lot.
road, it's, the property line was 2 feet to the left of that as you're looking from the road.
Yeah, well, that
And
explains that.
that's why there was a new one and an older one, which had marked the septic system. The left lot line along the driveway was marked quite a ways down it. And there was a stake down by the pond. Now, I mean, we can't guarantee them staying, but it was there.
Well, the ones that are closest to the pond are both marked lot line, not lot corner, and obviously the lot corner is further down, so they're not there.
The lot line goes to the pond, and frankly, where the stake could be the legal edge of the pond.
I don't see there's a high tide or a low tide there, so there was.
Well, over the seasons, the
I was
water
not-
goes
you know,
up and
it
the
just-
water goes down.
The 4 lot corners is the first thing that we require in our staking policy, and they were not
They
there.
were done. If somebody had said they couldn't find them, we could have gone out and refreshed them, but they were done.
I even asked Mr. Bunker to send me pictures of those stakes, so after I had twice reminded him to do it, and after he said it was done, and he sent me pictures of it. And the board goes out, has a problem. I gather some of you have been out twice, but nobody reported the problem to the zoning administrator and said, call the applicant, or call Ament, or call Bunker, so that they could fix what they had done.
That's not in our policy, and I went there last night and this morning. I mean, that's pretty short. It's supposed to be done in 7 days.
We know that they were there. We know that they were there. And your application of the policy, I think, is just unfair, where we've done such an effort to get it done right, and where the stakes on the street and the stakes in the water, because the lot goes to the water, tells you nothing you don't know about this project that those stakes would help you see.
So my feeling on this one, only because it's a 1.35 acre lot, and the lot coverage is only going to be 4.42%. One of the corners was water. I'm okay with proceeding, but the board has a policy, it's voted on, I'll defer to the board.
If we make an allowance for one, we make an allowance for all. It's pretty simple. And the basic 4 lot corners are necessary.
Frank?
When I went out and I saw the property, I noticed some of the things that Mark noticed. I personally had enough information, but I know the board has a policy, and I would adhere to the policy.
Did you get through Concom last night?
The Concom closed the hearing last night, took it on advisement as they usually did. They're going to vote on the decision next week.
So no decision, okay.
I hate to keep kicking these things down the road because we're just getting piled up on future meetings, but it's the policy. I apologize, but that's, I think we gotta get this stuff staked and it's gotta be documented.
The apologies, it just says we have to stake it, which we did.
It says staked 7 days ahead. We did that. I have the photos to show
It was
it.
done in good faith. It was done. And if somebody went there once last week or earlier this week and said we couldn't find it, we would have gone out and put them back in again.
We're volunteers. We fit this into our spare time and we get nothing. I showed up last night and again this morning just to double check myself because they're not there.
If you had gone last Friday, they would have been there.
Going forward, please notify the zoning administrator if anybody sees a staking issue. And she can communicate with the applicant.
If we have to fix it, we fix it, but we have to know that we have to do that.
Is there a short date available that would be agreeable?
It should be pretty quick, it's a good project.
We could add it to January 4th.
I think it'll be pretty quick. I think, that's my opinion only, sorry, everyone.
We have a,
Have a what?
it was kind of piled up on the 4th of January
But I
already,
think
aren't we?
this will be pretty quick. It's a good, it looked like a good project to me. I'm only speaking for myself. I don't think it will take us that long.
Okay.
I don't think there are any letters in here, or,
We're starting at 6
Opposition.
o'clock, so we got,
I mean, you could potentially reorder your hearings so that you could perhaps do this one on the earlier end. So
Yeah.
that's, you know.
we can pull it up and do it.
it would actually, it would technically be, no, we didn't open.
We
the
haven't
hearing.
opened.
Didn't open, okay.
So is that a motion?
Yes. January 4th.
January 4th, seconded by Mr. Finner. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Continue to 1-4.
Thank you for your efforts.
Thanks.
Next up, we have 09723 Roberts, 384 Casket Road, East Falmouth, requesting a special permit to construct a detached 3-car garage with habitable space in the front yard more than 50 feet from the front property line.
We're gonna open. Yay.
Is taking okay?
We're gonna open. Yay. We have William C. Roberts, 12 Washington Street in Wellesley, Mass. Applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to section 240:11.4A, 1 in parentheses, I, and 246B, 6.6B of the Code of Falmouth to construct a detached 3-car garage with habitable space above in the front yard more than 50 feet from the front property line. Subject property, 384 Actapasket Road. And from town boards, let's see what we had. Assessor's office is requesting inspection prior to final sign-off. Fire department, no issues. Conservation, no issues. Engineering. Number 1, this application was reviewed for impacts to public rights-of-way and public utilities. Actapasket Road is right-of-way in this area. The proposed second driveway will require filing a permit with the engineering division, and note that the additional information will be required to obtain an approved driveway permit. We request that the board either require the applicant to obtain an approved driveway permit from the engineering division prior to the closing of the hearing for the special permit, or that the board include the following condition if the special permit is approved. Quotations, the applicant shall obtain an approved driveway permit and post any required bond with the engineering division prior to the start of construction. The applicant shall complete the work as approved by the engineering division in the driveway permit, end of quote. 2, any connections or alterations to public utilities will require permission from the appropriate town department. The project must not direct any storm water runoff to public property, abutters or public rights of way. 4, a dry well is proposed for the new roof, as we typically recommend. 5, erosion controls are shown on the plan and appear to be mostly adequate to protect abutting properties and the public right of way. We will require some additional information for the driveway permit, such as a construction entrance and erosion controls across the front of the lot at Acapesket. We recommend the following condition be included on any approval. Construction of this project shall follow the town's soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions. Document can be found in the engineering division's page of the town's website. And I think that's all we have. And we have no letters. That's it.
For the applicant, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Kevin Flower. I'm here before you tonight representing William Roberts, the owner of 384 Acapesket Road in East Falmouth. He is requesting permission to build a detached 3-car garage with habitable space above. This board might be having a feeling of deja vu. A very similar application with a similar address was before this board only last week. This property, 384 Acapesket Road, is located toward the southern end of Acapesket. It's on the seaward side of the street. The lot is 28,000 square feet, and it's in the residential B zoning district. Presently, there's a 3-bedroom, single-family dwelling, total footprint of a little under 3,000 square feet. So the lot coverage by structure there is 10.28%. Currently conforms to setback and lot coverage requirements. Applicant's requesting permission to construct a detached 3-car garage with habitable space on the second floor. This is not to be used as an accessory dwelling. It's not being requested as an accessory dwelling. Simply additional space. It's overflow space for adult children and grandchildren. Proposed garage requires a special permit under sections 240.11.4A1, formerly 68A8, and section 246.6B, which was formerly 240.38G. 240.11.4A1 allows for an accessory structure in the front yard provided it's at least 50 feet from the street. 246.6B allows for a garage space more than 2 vehicles. There's no actual standard set forth for consideration in the bylaw for either of these provisions, so we look to the standards of 240.12.1E, which governs all special permit decisions. This proposal results in total lot coverage by structure of 4,147 square feet, which will remain conforming at 14.8%. In fact, it's well below the 20% that's allowed. Lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking is likewise conforming at 29.88%. The ridge height for the accessory structures conforming at 21 feet, 6.5 inches. The finished space will include additional bedrooms, but we are proposing a separate septic system, which will be entirely conforming to health regulations. As I noted, this is not intended as an accessory dwelling. It will lack cooking facilities. We would welcome a condition prohibiting cooking facilities or use as an accessory dwelling unit unless it was permitted as such by this town. The threshold question for this application under 240.12.1E is, does the proposed use have adverse effects that overbalance the beneficial effects to the neighborhood and to the town? This lot is more than adequate in size. It doesn't change the nature of the proposed use. It remains a single-family dwelling. It just increases the owner's utilization. There's no impact on traffic flow and safety. It remains in line with neighborhood character and does not affect any public services. Further, there's no new nonconformities created. There's no existing nonconformities affected. Lot coverage by structure and lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking both remain well under allowable thresholds and conforming. And there's no impact of views and vistas. I believe that this meets all the requirements set forth in 11.4A1, I, 246.6B, and 240.12.1E. I'd ask that this board grant the special permit, and I would, of course, be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Questions from the board. Start with you, Tony.
I have no questions.
Scott?
Make sure they're not cooking up there.
No cooking facilities, and happy to have that as a condition.
Suzanne?
Did you get anything from the Board of Health? I don't see anything in.
No, there was no referral from the Board of Health, but we'll have to apply through them for the septic permit, so.
For the septic, yeah. I have nothing else either.
Sorry.
It's great. No, I'm sorry.
Is that gonna be a standard Title V or a D-night?
I believe standard, but I
think
leave
it's
that
a
to people.
D-night.
I think it's a
saw the
D-night.
chamber, yeah.
I leave that to people smarter than I.
No,
No,
it's a
it's
D-night.
a D-night.
And it's a D-night.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right on the water.
Tell them thank you for doing that.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's why.
What we want.
I kind of scratched my head and went, oh, that's good.
No, he's gone overboard, he certainly has the room, and,
Frank?
No, I'm okay with that. I just point out, though, that it's kind of dangerous to pull out of that driveway.
Well, it is set 50 feet back. You get a lot of sight lines either direction. There'll be a new driveway. I'm sure they'll clear out some of that area.
and
I would hope so, because
backing out of the driveway,
it's
out of the
scary.
garage,
It's scary.
will make it safer, because you'll be able to go forward instead of pulling that three-point turn that you have to get out at the present, so it's actually gonna improve it.
Yeah, I think there'll be enough space there in that driveway leading up to the garage to have space to turn around.
Bang it, yeah.
Public comment.
I thought all those people were here for the garage.
Richard, anything? Okay, how would the board like to proceed?
Motion to close?
Motion to close, Ms. Suzanne, is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Scott, discussion on the motion to close. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
How would the board like to proceed?
Motion to close with conditions, sorry.
Approve with conditions. Second?
Second.
Scott. Findings?
Findings, let's see, it's in an RB zone, Green Pond overlay, flood zone XD and AE 15, but there was a note in there that said the structure is not in the flood zone.
Right.
It's a 28,000 square foot lot. Let's see, I have existing 10.26 over 2535. Tell me if I'm right.
10.28.
What?
10.28. Close.
That's all right, I had 21.8 on the ridge height too, and I had to correct that one. And the proposed is 1481 over 2988?
Correct.
Got one right. 21.6 on the height.
6.5.
Oh, and a half, sorry. I was on a roll. Three-car garage. That's all I have for findings.
Existing structures is 2877 with what they're proposing going to 4147.
Yeah.
Testimony is there will be a new conforming D-night septic. Let's see, lot is suitable for the proposal, would be, buildings can go in by right. No other findings. Condition, any other findings? Conditions?
Assessor
Mr. Morris, if I can just
inspection.
make a quick note on the garage bays. It's a three-car garage, but there are 4 doors, because there's a small storage area that has a door. I just wanted to note that.
But it's not a door for a car.
It's not a door for cars.
Smaller.
Yeah.
The record will so reflect. And add that to findings, please. Conditions?
Assessor inspection.
Assessors, yep.
Health, we need, all he can get us from health.
Driveway permit or bond.
Driveway permit, or, yep, just the engineering, just incorporate the engineering comments and conditions.
Scott says no cooking,
Yes, condition,
Right,
no
Scott.
cooking, not to be used as habitable space
unless they invite us.
without modification of
But it
permit.
is habitable
With the
space.
outdoor
Well, not to be
garage.
used as, not to be used as,
Not-
yeah.
it's not a dwelling.
Right, not dwelling. No cooking facilities above the garage.
If it's grandkids are gonna go to the big house to eat anyway.
Where I send my kids. Go see Nan and Papa.
Septic, hours of work. Anything else?
Height cert and framing?
2165, I'm not concerned about that. If it was 30, I'm a little more.
22 is the max
Ah, well, that's a
for
good
an
point then.
accessory structure. So they're technically within 6 inches of the height limit.
Sure,
Sure.
sure.
Fair enough.
If you started framing, everybody's assured that you're safe, right? There's
At a height cert.
problem.
Yep.
Not the hill I'm gonna die on tonight.
The engineering department was a bit concerned about construction with the garage itself. I don't know how we condition that.
Is a comment? Refresh my memory.
Let's read it again. There was something about, have I got the right house?
I think they said it seems to be adequate.
Yeah, what did he say?
I think that was the other one.
Yeah.
Was it the other one? Yeah, I could have the right
yeah.
house.
Plan
Any other
does note
conditions?
erosion controls, so.
Part of the engineering comments. Soil
Yeah.
and erosion
Engineering
controls and driveway permits. Anything else, Frank, Mark? No. Maureen? Tony? Scott?
No.
Okay, all those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote.
Yay.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time and
Thanks.
effort.
Thank
It being the last hearing of the year for me, for all of us, I want to say thank you all for your continued efforts,
Yeah, Merry Christmas, kid.
and Merry Christmas to you all,
Thank you.
To you.
if that's your thing.
Ho, ho, ho.
Second to last night of Hanukkah tonight, too. Open meeting agenda items. We have the minutes of November 2nd, 2023. Has everyone on the board had opportunity to review those?
Yes.
Any comments or additions or modifications need to be made?
No, I move the approval of November 2nd.
Motion to approve by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Finneran. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's a vote. We'll be tabling November 30th and December the 7th, 2023. Board discussion? Board updates?
January's gonna be fun. That's my
Future
update.
agenda items? We've added stuff to the meeting of the 21st, but anything else? Our next scheduled meeting will be December 21st, 2023, at 6 PM at the Lawrence School Auditorium. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.